Okay, what you're going to learn in this tutorial is how to take a picture of an isometric background like this, bring that background into Krita, use Krita's ability to slice this background up into even pieces, which will give you a result something like this. By having the background split up into different pieces, this makes it easier for game engines like Gdevelop 5 to be able to load the background in. Once you have this background sliced up, you're going to be shown how to go to Gdevelop, how to have the background be put together. You're also going to learn how to make a player character that can walk around this background. You're going to learn how to make areas that don't allow the player character to walk through. So these green blocks you see right here will be placed over buildings. They can be placed over whatever you want the player character to not walk through. So once you have all that, pretty much what you're going to end up with is what you see in front of you, where your player character can walk around the environment. The camera will follow your player character, but the camera will only follow your player character within the limits of the screen. If your player character tries to walk through a building, they'll be stopped. They won't be able to walk through a building, but they will be able to walk around the rest of the environment. Then when they get to the edge of the environment, the camera will stop. And the camera will restart following the player character once they get far enough away from the edge. Hi, this is Ali Arango of Game Visuals as well as LittleGuyCGI.com. Today I would like to show you how to make easy isometric backgrounds in Krita as well as use those isometric backgrounds in Gdevelop 5. So let's get started. Okay, what I'm about to show you here, I don't know if I would recommend you to use this inside of a actual full finished game. However, this should help you as far as working on a game, particularly an isometric game. Just getting you working and giving you a background that you can work with, and being able to set up that background fairly easily. Okay, to begin this process off, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Google. We're then going to search for Google Maps, then press enter. So here's Google Maps right here. Okay, here we are inside of Google Maps. We're going to go to the search bar in the upper left. You're in New York. So we can see New York right here, right? We're over New York and we are in Google Maps because basically we can use Google Maps to get quick areas, particularly of areas like city areas. And right here, when we look at Google Maps, this looks like a regular map. So what we're going to do is go to our upper left-hand corner, left click, and then we're clicked on map, we're going to select satellite. So here we have a satellite view. So now you can see that we have a view that looks more like terrain that you would see like in a game. Okay, so what we want to do is the way we can navigate around Google Maps is if you left click and drag, you can drag the area around. We're going to look at New York here. So this is the area this is the general area of New York City. We're going to zoom in. As we zoom in, we can see that things get clearer, like Google makes them look clearer. So we have all of these different labels right here right now. We're going to look towards right here. This is the Brooklyn Bridge, right? This area right where the Brooklyn Bridge comes up next to the seaport. So now what we're going to do is go to our upper left. We have these 3 lines here. We're going to left click there. And then we're going to look to where we see these labels on. We're going to left click to turn that off. So now we don't have any labels blocking our view. Okay, so this is the Brooklyn. This should be the Brooklyn Bridge. You can always go here and then turn the labels back on. Yep, so there's the Brooklyn Bridge. I'll click, then turn this back off. So now what we want to do is, I'm looking at this area right here. I'm going to zoom in, right? So we have this top-down view, not quite isometric. However, look to your lower right. See this thing that says 3D? We're going to left click here. And now you can see we have this isometric-like view here. This particular area right here, I like this area because we're going to use Google Maps to get our isometric background. And what I like about this area is there's space in between the buildings. The buildings aren't so high right in this area where you can't see the street. So basically, to manipulate your view, if you roll your mouse, you can zoom in, you can zoom out. If you left click and drag, you can drag around. We are on the website for Google Maps. This is just a website. So it's nice because as long as you have access to Google, as far as I know, you can get to this website. And then if you hold the control key on your keyboard, what you can do is rotate as well as rotate the view. So you can control how isometric the view is. Okay, so what we want to do is make sure we have the best area. And what we want to do is get a screenshot, right? So this area here I like because the buildings aren't too high. However, I do think I'm zooming back out. So here is the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm going past the Brooklyn Bridge, past the bridge right here. What's very cool with Google Maps is, I mean, you pretty much have the entire planet. What you'll find with Google Maps is that certain places have more 3D-ness to the terrain than others. So this is let's see. Let's turn the labels back on. So this is the Williamsburg Bridge here. Just turn the labels back off. There was an area over here. Yeah, see these 2 things here? Not sure what those are. So I'm zooming in. I'm holding control to rotate the view. And what I like was this is more city area. However, the streets are wider here. So this will give us a more room to play with as far as our isometric background. So the areas are more open here. So I'm just left clicking and dragging. Okay, I'm going to go even more to the right. There's more open area here, and I like this because I think we can get more of a side isometric view here. There's open space here. So I'm going to hold control, go more to the side. And what you want to do is you want to look at, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel back, areas where your character can move through, like here. There's different spots where there's elements that we can use where our character can freely move. So this is nice right here. Okay, so since we have our area picked, we want to pick get a screenshot area, screenshot pick of this area. So to do that, if you're using a Windows computer, I'm going to search for snip, just S-N-I-P. Here's the snipping tool. I'm going to left click there. This menu pops up. I'm going to select new. I'm going to be aware of this red pipe looking object here as well as these trees. And what I want to do is I'm going to left click and drag. Of this area here. I'm then going to go to File, Save. save this to some place where I know it's going to be. Right, so this is a folder that I have picked for these pictures. I'm going to name this 1 and then click Save. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is minimize the snip tool. I am going to look here, this area here. I'm going to pull this over not too far, because as you pull the area over, your perspective will change. I'm going to take the snipping tool again. I'm then going to click New. Grab another screenshot. Then select File, Save As, name this 2, then click Save. Okay, what I'm thinking is we're probably not going to use this screenshot. However, we have this if we want to add additional background onto the area we're working with. Okay, so we have what we need as far as our screenshot. So I'm going to go to the upper right, close that snip tool. I'm going to click the button to the right to close the Google Maps tool. Now we're going to bring our images into Krita. Okay, if you don't know what Krita is an open source image manipulation tool. It is very nice. It is very, looks very professional. Krita is spectacular. You can get Krita totally for free. If you want to donate to Krita, you can. However, you can get Krita totally for free. I just wanted to show you the website where you would go to download Krita. So this is it. It is https://krita.org, for me/en/. So you can come here and download Krita. Okay, here we are inside of Krita. If you've used Photoshop before, Krita is very similar to Photoshop. If you've used GIMP before, Krita is very similar to GIMP. So what we want to do is go to File, Open. Then we want to go to our folder that has our screenshots in it. So I have mine here in this isometric backgrounds tutorial. I'm going to left click here. So it's number 1. So I'm going to left click on number 1 and then click Open. Okay, the reason why we are bringing this screenshot into Krita is because when you have a fairly large image like this, you want to make things as easy as possible for something like a program like Gdevelop 5. Suppose you wanted to have this entire, not just what you see here, but like the area above this area, below this area, to the side of this area, to the left of this area. You could bring this all into Gdevelop 5, or if you're using another game engine, you could bring it into there. However, I would not recommend that you bring it in all as one image. I would recommend that you bring the image bring the image into a program like Krita and then break the image up. And that's why we're here into Krita. So we're going to break this image up into separate pieces so that this is easier to use when you bring this into a game engine. So we want to split this image up. Krita has a very easy way of splitting up this image. One of the things we want to do is we want to have a place for the split images to go to, that place being a folder. So what we're going to do is I'm going to Windows computer, so I'm going to press Windows E. It's a shortcut for just bringing up your file folder. I'm going to look for the folder that I'm using, and then I'm going to make a folder to hold these images in. Here's the folder here. So I'm just going to make a new folder by clicking this button to the upper left. And I'm just going to name this holder, short for image holder. So now that I have this file folder made up, I'm going to go back to Krita. So here we are in Krita. So with this image here selected, typically when I'm in the image manipulation program, I'll almost always duplicate the layer just so I have a backup. So with this this layer here, I just right clicked and click duplicate, by the way. With this layer here selected, I'm going to go to image split. So once I click image split, you see this image pop ups. We have horizontal lines as well as vertical lines. This is very important. We're just going to take this up to 2. So we have 2 for horizontal lines, 2 as well as vertical lines. The rest of how this is set up, we're going to leave this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click apply. So once we clicked apply, now Krita is basically saying, where do you want me to send this these images from the original images? So this is going to be split up images. So I'm going to left click on holder, then I'm going to click select folder. Okay, so now when we go to holder, the folder I made to hold up the multiple images, we have these different images here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, what Krita does is very nice is these images are split up equally. They're all the same size, and Krita split this up and did this work very quickly. So this is nice. Okay, now what we're going to do is go to Gdevelop 5. Okay, here in Gdevelop 5, we're going to left click on create a new project. We're going to select empty game. Then when we did that, we have these menus pop over to the left. See where we see scenes? We have this plus right underneath. We're going to left click on that plus. We're then going to left click on new scene. Now we see what's on our screen now. Okay, what we're about to do is bring in a player character. We're going to use player sprites to animate that character. To get these player sprites, what you can do is you can go to littleguyscgi.com. You can left click on game visuals, scroll down, click on game assets, scroll down, look to where you see player sprites, left click here, scroll down, and then you see this isometric blockman animation frames. This is what we're going to be using for this tutorial. So you can click here and then download these sprites so you can follow along with this tutorial. These sprites will be provided to you free of charge. Okay, so what we want to do is go to our right. We want to click this plus button. We want to select sprite. We're going to name this player. Then what we're going to do is click the plus button to the right. And what we're going to do is this animation run, we're going to name this idle. We're then going to press the plus button to the right again. This animation, so this is the 0 is idle, the 1, this animation here, we want to name this left. We're going to click this plus button to the right again. We're going to name this right. We're going to click the plus button to the right again. We're going to name this up. We're going to click the plus button to the right again. We're going to name this down. And then we're going to click apply. Okay, I applied this just because I wanted to have the animation names stay in our file, and so I could save this. So what we're going to do is left click to go back in here. We have our names, so we need to just take the animation frames and match them up with the names. So we have an idle pose. That's going to be one pose. So we double clicked. We're going to look for where that idle pose is at. It's here. So I'm going to go to idle, left click, and then bring in that idle pose. We need the left frames. We're going to click here. Same thing again. Go to where those are at. Here's left. So I'm going to hold control, press A, then click open. We're going to go to right, plus, same thing. We're going to look for those, for where things are right, double click, hold control, press A. We're then going to click open. We need the up frames, same thing. We are looking for up, double click, hold control, press A, click open. We need the down frames. We're going to left click, same thing again. We're looking for down here. We're going to hold control, press A, click open. So then now what we're going to do is we want these to loop. So we're going to left click to change this don't loop to loop. We're then going to click apply. Okay, I clicked apply and I came out. Again, I wanted to save the file. You could, just stay and keep doing this. So I left click to go back in. See this behaviors up top here. We're going to left click on behaviors. Then we have this purple line going underneath behaviors. We're going to click the plus button to the right. We have all these different behaviors. Now what behaviors are they are a way of adding basic actions to our characters. So what we want to do is select this top down movement. We're going to left click here. And then we want to look to where we see this rotate object. We're going to unclick rotate object. We have our max speed here at 200. What we want to do is change the speed from 200 to 75. And then with that set up, we want to click apply. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go to our upper right. We're going to left click, then left click and drag our player out into our player area. So you can see our player is fairly big. We're going to hover over this corner square, hold shift, and then we're going to left click and drag to shrink the player down. This button to the upper right is our preview button. I'm going to click here, and you can see that when I push the what I am doing is I'm pushing the arrow keys and our player is moving around. The player is not animating though. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set up to program to have this player animate. We're going to go through this fairly quickly. I have another tutorial on this channel that goes through this in a good amount of depth. So what we're going to do is look to our upper left. On the screen we're in, pretty much as far as Gdevelop, we work with art here. We click this new scene and events. This takes us to a tab where we can work with programming, and this is where we're going to program to set up our animations. What we're going to do is look to our upper right. See this plus button here? We're going to left click there. Once we left click there, now we have basically an event where we can add a condition as well as an action. Okay, in Gdevelop, pretty much condition says when something happens. You tell like Gdevelop when something happens. That's what conditions deal with. Actions pretty much tell Gdevelop what to do when that thing happens. So what we want to do is we want to left click on add condition. We want to scroll down and look down for top down movement, which is right here. We're going to left click on top down movement, and then we see this is moving. We're going to left click on is moving. We're going to left click on player, and then we're going to click OK. Okay, in Gdevelop, condition as well as an action is an event. What we want to do is left click and make sure we have this blue outline around our event. You can tell that the event is clicked on by the fact that this blue line is here. With this blue line being here, we want to go to not the first button to the left, but the next button to the right, where this says add a sub event to the selected event. So we're going to left click there. Now we can see this indented sub event added to our event here. Okay, so basically what we have set up is we're saying, look, when our character is moving, we want you to do something, right? That's what we're going to do with this sub event. So I'm going to left click on add condition, and then what I'm going to look for is keyboard. So I'm going to left click on keyboard. I'm going to select key pressed, and then I'm going to go to the upper right. I'm going to hold shift, type in L, then type in EFT. I'm going to left click on left, then I'm going to click OK. Okay, like I had mentioned before, I have another tutorial on this that gets into more detail on this. We're going to go through this fairly quickly as far as setting up the player, since the main purpose of this tutorial is showing you how to set up an easy isometric background. So what we're going to do right here with this left key is pressed, we want something to happen. What we want to happen is for an animation to show. So we're going to click Add Animation. We're going to select Sprite. We're going to select Animations and Images. Then we're going to select Change the Animation. So we're going to select Player. For this modification sign, we're going to click here. We're going to set equals. And then for this setting here, we're going to set this to 1. Then we're going to click OK. Okay, there's multiple ways of setting up animations in Gdevelop. We chose change the animation. The animation that we chose basically works by Gdevelop knows that 1 equals left, 2 equals right, 3 equals up, and 4 equals down. So that's what this 1 is saying. This 1 is saying pick that animation that's in the 1 position, which is going to show our character going to the left, which makes sense since the key that we have to activate that animation is the left key. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to left click so this gray is highlighted. So I didn't click yet. I'm hovered over here. I'm going to left click once. So this blue line is going around. This left key is pressed. I'm going to right click, select copy, and then I'm going to hover over this condition. This is a condition in the same SubEvent. Okay, so I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to select paste, and then we have another condition in the same SubEvent. I'm hovered over this. I'm going to right click. I'm then going to select paste. Okay, what's going on here is when the left key is pressed, we want the animation that's in the position 1 to activate. We're going to set these keys up so that when these keys are pressed, nothing happens. If we didn't do this, when we pressed diagonal, as our character is moving around the environment, our character would slide diagonally without showing an animation. So what we're going to do is double click to go in here. We're going to change this to up, capital U, P. We're then going to set this for inverse condition. We're then going to click OK. And then we're going to double click here. We're going to change this to down. That's capital D. And then we're going to set this to inverse condition and then click OK. Okay, what we're about to do now is for the sake of speed, we're going to left click here on our event. So this is SubEvents, this is events. With this clicked on, we can tell this is clicked on because it has a blue outline around it, but there's no blue outline here, right? So with this clicked on, we're going to go to our Add SubEvent button. That's the one to the it's a SubEvent button. So we're going to click plus, and then plus to add these other SubEvents. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to left click so that this SubEvent is highlighted. And with this SubEvent highlighted, we're going to right click. And after right clicking, we're going to select copy. Then we're going to left click on this SubEvent, right click, then select paste. Right click, select paste. Then right click and then select paste. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to have this say right. So we can left click here and change this without actually going into the settings to right. This needs to be up, so we can do the same thing. Capital U, up. This needs to be down, same thing. Okay, so now that we have this set up, we need to have these set up. So this where it says up, down, that's correct. For this, it's not correct here. So for this, this needs to be left. This needs to be right. Same thing for this. This needs to be left. This needs to be right. Okay, so what we just did was we said when left is pressed, activate this, but not when these buttons are pressed. Don't activate anything. Right's pressed. We need to set this up. So to set this up, this needs to show animation 2. So we can click here, change this to 2. For when up is pressed, this needs to be 3. And what these numbers are going along with is the order that we put the animations in. Gdevelop knows that the order for 1, 2, and 3, like what they should be. So when down key is pressed, this needs to be 4. Okay, with all that set up, we should be able to click our preview button. And when we set our character to walk, you can see that our character is walking in the direction that they should be walking in. Now our character does not go back to an idle animation, and we need to set that up. Okay, to set up our idle animation, what we're going to do is left click here on the event. We're going to go to this button here to the upper right. We're going to select add a new empty event. So then we're going to click add condition. We're going to look for top down behavior or top down movement. So top down movement is what you want to look for. Left click there. Then you're going to left click on is moving. The player is what we're working with, right? And then for this condition, we want this to be when the player isn't moving. So we're going to left click on invert condition. And then we're going to select OK. Okay, for this event, which I just clicked on to select this, we're not going to need any button to have anything activate. We just want when our player is not moving for our player to show the idle pose. So what we're going to do is we're going to click add action, sprite, animations and images, change the animation, player. We're going to set this to equals. And then for this setting, we're going to choose 0 and then click OK. Okay, so why did we pick 0? We picked 0 because 0 is the where our idle animation is located at. So when we click the preview button here, you can see that when our character is not moving, our character is in their idle animation. Idle pose. So I can go diagonal, I can go left or left, right, down, up. Then when I stop, our character goes back to their idle pose. Okay, what we're going to do now is click on New Scene. We're going to look to our right. We're going to click this plus button to the right. We're going to click Sprite. We're about to bring in our background picture, so we're going to name this BG. We're going to click the plus button to the right. We have 9 pictures to bring in, so we're going to look to the right. We're going to click this 8 more times. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So what's going on here is each picture that makes up our one background picture is a separate animation. That animation will be composed of one picture. So what we're going to do is click plus, and we're just going to bring in those pictures one at a time. So each picture is an animation. So this is 4. This is 5. This is 6. This is 7. This is 8. This is 9. Okay, I'm going to click apply. Okay, I came out just so I could save this. I'm going to double click. We don't. This is good for what we have here. We should be. Oh, wait a second. Okay, what we're going to do is just name this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I can see that these don't match up with the animations. I just chose to go through in that way. It should be fine. As far as I know, it does not matter. You can name these what you want, name them numbers, or put whatever names that you want to these. Okay, so if you're like, why break up these images? Why not just bring them in as one picture, put them on the background? Just to make, we're doing this to make things easier for the game engine that we're using, which is Gdevelop. I would recommend whatever game engine that you're using, you do a similar thing if you're bringing in one picture as a background. It's just a technique to, so now Gdevelop has to load each little picture rather than a big picture. And suppose we wanted a large picture of a large portion of the city. We could bring in a fairly large area of the city and not be concerned about the game engine taking a while to load the image in, because it's only loading in the individual pictures of that make up that image. Okay, for now we're going to click on our player character, pull them to the side. We're going to click on our background image. We're going to left click and drag this out. So here is that picture right there. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. Okay, so what's going on here is we have our background image. Now in this background image, it has all of the other images as an animation. So how are we going to, work with this? Like, because if I pull out another picture, it's going to be the same thing as this. And I can show you, like, if I well, actually, let me do this first. To make this easier, you're going to look to your upper right. You're going to look to where you see toggle/edit grid. You're going to left click, and then you're going to select show grid. This grid is going to make things easier for you as far as matching up each of your different individual images and then putting them together as the one background picture. So what we're going to do is line this up with the grid. And to see right here, here's the grid line, and here's here. What we want to do is take this square and we want to make this picture be confined to the grid. So we're going to pull this picture up and see the picture snaps right there. So it's snapped into this place on the grid. That's what we want. Okay, something else that's very important that you're going to need. I'm going to press the Windows key, then press E to bring up this Windows picture right here. And what you are going to need is you're going to need the original picture. So I'm going to double click this. This is the original picture right here. So you're going to need this to put together to help you. You don't absolutely need it. It helps a lot to have this picture here to look at so you can put together the individual pictures that make up this image here. Okay, I am working on a computer that has two monitors set up. So I have a left as well as a right monitor. For me, I'm going to take this picture and put it to the side so I can still see it. For yourself, if you want to put it in the background and use it as reference, put it somewhere where you can either see it, if you have a multi-monitor setup, or minimize it so you can get to it, so you can use it. If you just would like to make things easier as far as you putting your picture together. Hopefully things will make more sense as we continue to work through this. You might be like, what is he talking about, putting it together and using this image? It's basically like we're putting a puzzle together. Okay, I have the picture on my other monitor so I can use that. What you want to do here with this is decide how big you want this picture to be. So I have this snap to the grid. Suppose you want this picture to be bigger. You can see the size of my character. I could make him smaller, or I could use him as the size that he is. I think I'm going to make this bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to drag this picture to make it bigger. And I'm just looking at the area there, right? So I'm going to roll my mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to move our player character off. I'm going to take this up over here like that. So before you begin duplicating your image, that's what we're about to do. You want to make sure this is the size that you want it to be. Once you have this being the size you want it to be, I'm going to hold Control, and then I just drag this picture out. So I let go of Control, it's just making sure it wasn't the same picture. So we have the same picture here, right? So I'm zooming back. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to pan the view. What I'm going to do is hold Control, left click and drag. I let go of Control. I'm going to hold Control, left click and drag. I let go of Control. Then I'm going to hold Shift, select all up. Well, okay, it won't let me. I don't think I can do that. So I'm just going to hold Control, let go of Control, drag, hold Control, drag, let go of Control, hold Control, drag, hold Control, let go of Control, hold Control. So now I have 9 pictures here. Okay, you're probably saying these are all the same pictures. You are correct. So when we click here, we can see here's the animation number right here. So this is 0, right? Now let's click on the second picture here. We'll change this to 1. You can see that picture changes. We'll click here. We'll change this to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We should have one more, so I'm going to hold Control, drag. So I must be wrong. So there's 8 pictures. So I'm going to delete that. Okay, so now this is where our puzzle aspect comes out at. So this here is going to be, I know that this is near the bottom. This here is more this way. This here isn't quite like that. And yeah, pretty much here it's just like putting a puzzle together. So here you can see those 2 pictures line up. I'm rolling the mouse wheel back. I'm just looking to see where my player character is at? Oh, there he goes. So yeah, these here, don't even be concerned too much, I would say, while you're lining these up. It's like where their position is. Just get them lined up, then you can move them later on to where you want them to be. Just like a puzzle. And the grid should help you. Granted, from this distance, the grid is making it a little difficult to see. So I don't think you need the names. I thought you needed the names, but I don't think you need the names. As you can see, these two pictures line up here, as well as here. Okay, so this should be lined up here. Okay, so this is here. Move this over. That's there. That is there. Okay, and this is here. So I'm going to hold them the mouse button. Okay, so now those are all lined up. Okay, so now that we know where the areas are at, I'm just going to move these down so that they're over our starting area or our main screen area. Okay, so I'm going to click on our background area. If we look to, we have this is okay, we don't need that. This is useful. This is a instance menu, and basically our layers are shown here. So the closer you get to 1, the further your layers are back. So our background layer is on 2. So when we go to move our player, when we want our player to be over this picture or these pictures to make up this one background image, because our player is 1, it'll actually be behind these pictures. So I'm going to click on our player. It's very small there. And then we see the Z order. So I'm going to change the Z order for our player to 4. So now we can left click, put our player right in the center here, and our player is showing over top of these pictures that make up our background image. Okay, while we have this instances menu up, if I left click on background, we can see over here, this is the these are the properties for the background object. Since this is the background object, let's put a check mark here so that we won't be able to move our background. So we have to click on each picture. So we'll click each picture and make it so the background It's locked. Can't be selected. I'm holding the middle mouse button to pan. So to get out of this, we would have to click back on our instances. Because see, we can't click here to see the properties panel because we can't click the background anymore. So we would have to use this instances menu and then come here, click one of these background pictures, and then go here and unclick there to get out of this. So I'm going to click this X button to get out of instances now. Okay, let's make it so a camera will follow our player around. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to pan the view. I'm going to click to the upper right, and then I'm going to left click on this check mark next to show grid so you can see our background without the grid. It makes it a lot easier to see. Okay, to have our camera follow our player character, we're going to click New Scene Events. We're going to click here where we see player is moving inverted. We have this blue outline surrounding this event. We're going to click this plus button to make a new event. In Gdevelop, a condition a condition says when something happens. We want this to happen all the time. And what this is the camera tracking our player character. So we're going to leave condition blank so that Gdevelop just constantly does this. We're going to click add action. We're going to go to layers and camera. And then we're going to select center the camera on an object. So we're going to left click here. That object is our player. So we're going to left click there. And then we're going to click OK. Okay, now with that done, we're going to click our preview button. And we can see our character traveling along our isometric background. When we look at our player character compared to the cars, our character is fairly big. So I'm going to close this, go back to New Scene Event. Okay, now we're going to zoom in. We can see the car there. The car is here. Let's click on our player. Let's hold Shift. Make our character smaller. Okay, with our character being smaller, let's click the preview button. Let's make this bigger so you can see. Character is very small. But the character is about the size of the cars. Our character is traveling around a little isometric world. Now see this, our character comes to the end of the screen and walks off. We don't want that. So let's fix that. Character might be a little too small. I'm going to click, I'm going to hold Shift. Make the character bigger. I'm going to click this preview button. Okay, it looks better that he's not quite in scale with the cars. Like if he was going to get in the cars, but you can see him better. We still have things so when the player comes to the edge, looks like the player's going to walk off the screen. The character can walk off the screen. We don't want that, so we're going to fix that. Okay, to have it so we don't see our character walking off the screen, we're going to click back on New Scene Events where we see center the player, the camera on the player. We're going to click here. Double click here. There we go. We're going to go to center the camera on an object within limits. We're going to double click here. For this top here, if it's grayed out and it doesn't look like you can select these options, you can. Don't let that get to you. You want this set for 0 for the top. This is just temporary 0 for that for 9. So the top 2 positions, you can just start off with 0. We're going to change that. Now we're going to go to 1920. 1920 for this X position. And then for this, we're going to put in 1080. So I'm just using the standard high definition settings, right? So with that set up, we're going to click OK. We're just doing this just so we have numbers that we can see here that we can change. Okay, we're going to click on New Scene Events. We're going to zoom back, right? See all this area here? Watch what happens when we click play. We see just this area here, right? I'm going to click to get out of a preview. Just this area here. We don't see all of this area right here. And if I click the preview again, and I try to have our character walk up, okay, they are walking up. Okay, they walked up some, but they're not going to walk past this white card and into the kind of grass up there. So we're going to click to get out of there. They're coming. Our player characters here. They're walking up to about here. We don't have any of this here, right? Okay, what we need is we need to know where the edge of our map is at. So we can left click on our player character. When we left click on the player character, see this X here, this Y here. This is telling us where our player character is as far as this area here, right? So we're going to left click our player character, pull them over to this corner here. So with our player character over here, we can see what is the edge here. So what we're going to do is highlight this number here, hold Control, press C. So we copy that number. I'm going to click here. Remember that 0 here? If we actually double click here, see this says the X position. So what we're going to do is highlight over this, hold Control, press V. So now we have that X position. We're going to click OK. So now we're going to click back to New Scene Event. Here's the Y position. We're going to highlight that, hold Control, press C. I'm going to click here. I just clicked to click off of that, by the way. I'm going to double click here. So here's the Y position. So we're going to highlight here, hold Control, press V, and then click OK. So now we have that Y position as well. Okay, so now with that done, when we click the preview button, now we can see here's our player character over here. I'm going to close that to get out of that. I'm going to click back on New Scene. Okay, so what I'm going to do is left click on our player character, move them back towards the center of our isometric background there. So now we're going to click the preview button again, and let's I'm going to maximize this view. So now we're going to travel up, and now you can see that we are traveling up into our Greenland there. We can see the water there. We can travel all the way over here along this fence, past a tree, and then our area stops there, and that's what we wanted to do. So we're going to travel to the other side. Traveling like this, you're like, okay, that's a decent amount of area we're covering there. So we're still traveling. And then now we have the screen there coming off the screen, this small piece of screen that we don't want to show there. Okay, so what we want to do is click on New Scene as well as Events. These numbers here, these first two numbers are fine. We know these numbers are, for the most part, correct because we used our player character to get these two numbers. This number here controls the width of our limits. So this is most likely why when we go to the side, we can see past what we want to see. So what we're going to do is click here. We're going to lower this down by 200. So then we're going to left click to just lock that in. Okay, now with that set up, we'll click the preview button. I'll click to maximize this. Let's travel up, go to the edge. So he's traveling. And now you can see when he gets to the edge, the camera doesn't just keep following him so that you can see the edge of the screen anymore. And then once he gets far enough away from the edge, the camera starts to follow him again. So now what we're going to do is travel down towards the bottom of the screen. And here we can see that he sees that what we don't want him to see. He has the ability to walk off of the screen. Okay, to fix that, what we're going to do is look at this number. This number controls our limits for up and down. We're going to click and change this to 800. Okay, so now with that number changed, let's click our preview. I'll click here to maximize this. Let's have him walk towards the bottom of the screen. Okay, now you can see near the bottom of the screen, he no longer can walk off the screen. And then when he walks up far enough, then the camera starts to follow him again. Okay, we're almost through this. I'm going to click the preview button. I'm going to click to maximize this. Now we have this building here. Now when I push to the right, we can just walk right through the building, and we don't want that. So that's actually fairly easy to set up. So we're going to set things up so you can't just walk through buildings like this. Okay, so we're going to click on New Scene. We're going to look to our right. We're going to click the plus button to the right. We're then going to select Sprite. We're going to name this block. Then we're going to click the plus button to the right. And then what we're going to do is select Edit with Piskel. So we're going to left click. This takes us into the built-in graphic editor inside of Gdevelop. We're going to click on this black square here. I'm going to change this to green. So I just dragged here and then dragged here. So we have this green color. I'm going to go to the paint bucket here. Fill this with this empty area with green. I'm going to name this block. It's not necessary to have this named. When I say this, we're making a sprite that's going to be brought into Gdevelop. I figure I named it because it was easy to name it. So we're going to go to Save. So now we have this block right here. So we're going to then click Apply. Okay, so I'm going to left click on this block. I'm then going to left click and drag this block out. Here's the block right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this block so that it is covering most of this building here. I'm going to hold control, and then I held control for very briefly, let go, very similar to what we did before. Holding control, this whole area right here. I'll click here, hold control. I'll click here, hold control and drag up. Hold control, now drag. There you go, let go of control. Click here again, hold control. I'm going to left click here, hold control, left click and drag. Make this thinner. See this circle right here? If we left click and drag on the circle, we can rotate our sprite. Not sure. I'm not sure how, as far as appearance, because it looks like this is still set here, but you can, I think this is more appearance. I'm not sure. Anyway, these sprites right here. Yeah, we definitely want the edges to be. So this is good here. I'm going to click here. I'm going to make this thinner. So I want our character to be able to move along the street there. Well, you can set this up in various ways to block out the buildings. So just know that we're going to use this to block where our player character goes. For areas like this, where there's things are slanted like that, because when I look here, I'm thinking that this is the computer's probably going to see this and not that. So what you could do is hold control, shrink this down, and you could use multiple, hold control, multiple versions of this to do diagonal. As a matter of fact, this here I'm actually going to delete. I'm going to hold control, pull this out, push this over here. I'm just going to hold control so that way I can make a diagonal right there. Shrink this down. Kind of because this is in the center, I'm thinking this is important. Same thing, I'm going to here, I'll drag this out like this. This can be, drag that to the side there. Hold control. Okay. Okay, so now we need to program this so that this actually blocks our player character. So we'll go to new scene and events. We'll click here. We have this highlighted here. We'll click to make a new event. We'll go to add condition. We'll go to common conditions for all objects. We'll then go to collision, collision again. We'll select the player. We'll then select for the object, the block, and then we'll click OK. Okay, so what this is saying is when our player is in collision with the block, do something. Now we need to tell Gdevelop what we want it to do. So we're going to click Add Action. We're going to go to Common Conditions for all objects. We're going to go to Position. Then we're going to go to Separate two objects. The first object is very important because the first object is the object that will be able to move. So that's the player. The second object is the block. Then we're going to click OK. Okay, so now with that set up, let's click the preview button. I'll click the up. We can still see these. So basically, well, let's test it out while we can see these. So we'll click here and we can see our player character cannot go through these green blocks. However, what we want is for it being the game to look like our player is, just cannot go through the buildings and not the green blocks that are there. Okay, so to set that up with this highlighted, this being this event, we're going to click this plus button to make a new event. We're going to click add condition. We're going to go to scene. We're going to select at the beginning of the scene. Then we're going to select OK. We're then going to go to add action. We're going to go to common actions for all objects. We're going to select visibility. We're going to select hide. And then we're going to select block. And then we're going to select OK. Okay, so with that set up, we're going to click the preview button. I'm going to click maximize. So now when our player character tries to walk through the building, the player character cannot walk through the buildings. And with this, you could make this be how you want it to be. So you could have things be so if you want the player character to not be able to walk through the cars, you could set that up. And it's fairly easy to do. So I'm going to click to the X button, get out of that preview window. Okay, as far as using these isometric backgrounds for final games, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. However, hopefully you can see that you can very quickly have an isometric background to work with. You could always take these backgrounds and put either 3D graphics over them or drawn graphics over them. You could also clean up the graphics in something like Krita, GIMP, or Photoshop. And what I like about this is it's just a very quick way to get isometric graphics to work with. Also, what's nice about this technique is you can have the areas be as big as you want them to be. You can also have urban areas, or you can have forest areas or desert areas. Because you're using Google Maps as the basis, you pretty much can, almost any type of, earth area that you can find on Google Maps, you can take that, get a screenshot of it and then use that as your isometric background. Okay guys, that's it for the tutorial. For all of those of you out there who liked videos on this channel and reshare them, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And for those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel and you would like to see more, please subscribe, and thank you for viewing.